I'm David Shipp of SmartFloor UK Limited, and the following videos will offer an insight into the full process of the rapidset True overlay system. In video 1, we'll be looking at tools that are needed to basically mix and apply the rapidset overlay. Video number 2 will be preparation and priming of the substrate. Video 3 will be mixing of the material and the slump test. Video 4 will be placement of the material. Video 5 will be grinding and polishing with 2 subcategories of the grout coat and densifier. And video 6 will be the stain guard and the burnishing, so essentially the money shots. I hope that you find the videos informative, and if you do need any other information, then obviously reach out to us. Okay, so to start off with, what we want is some good implements for measuring out your water. So a good measuring jug of at least 5 litre capacity with an accurate gauge on the side. Please don't rely on the builder's bucket with the linear gauge on the side, they're not accurate enough. Alternatively, you can use weighing scales, which is a much more accurate way of doing things. Obviously that does bring its own hazards with it being electrical, but we know a litre of water weighs 1 kilogram. So that's a very accurate way to measure out your water. You'll also need several very good quality buckets. You don't want the handles dropping off when you're carrying water about. And a bowser of some kind, whether it's a wheelie bin or something to decant your water from. Okay, so for mixing and placing the material, the Mega Hippo from Portamix and the Pelican as well. You can mix and place using the Hippo, but if you're on a job site of anything over 30 to 50 square metres, you'd really want the pair, so that your mixers just constantly get the material mixed and ready, and the placement can be executed using the Pelican. So we've got the Mega Hippo with the larger motor, always worthwhile for the extra couple £100, because you will be mixing anything up to 5 bags of material at a time. It's got the dust lid, so your water goes in first, switch on, and then slowly load your material. At the last count, when everything's getting wet, you'd switch off, change the speed to fast, and then mix for the prescribed time, which we'll come on to in the next video. And so you can deliver the material using this on a small job, just simply by working the lever, tipping the unit forward, and then dispensing the material out. It is top heavy because of the mixer, so you do need to be sort of skilled with it, otherwise you're going to dump it all on the floor straight away. If you opt to go for the Pelican mixer, then you will need the Hippo on a raised mixing station, so it's higher than this and it will tip into it. So generally speaking, 4 pallets on top of there, but health and safety doesn't really allow us to do that kind of thing anymore. So a good practice is to use a hydraulic scissor table. So you can have the unit down while you load it, up in the air while it's mixing, and then when it's ready, into the Pelican, and then off to place the material. So this is self-explanatory, it's just a very large bucket on wheels, put a catch there, and then we place our material this way in ribbons. So the Hippo will mix via these specific paddles, don't use anything else, and you have basically a 3 and a 5 bag mix paddle. It's very important to observe this, so don't use the 3 paddle mixer on a 5 bag mix, because you just won't get that inward flow. You want the material coming up the bucket and then down into the vortex of the paddle mixer to really cut the material. Now, more often than not, as luck would have it, when you're finishing a job, you might just need 1 bag. Again, don't be tempted to use the 3 bag paddle if you're just mixing 1 bag, because it just simply will not cut correctly, and you could have a shade difference with the finished floor. There is an appropriate mixer for 1 bags, which you use in a bucket with a paddle mixer. So please kit yourself out with one of these. They're probably sort of £30–50 at the most, I would think. So the next item that you're going to need is the slump test kit. which consists of a piece of acrylic and a slump ring, which we can supply free of charge. It's imperative that you perform a slump test with either true natural, true grey, PC or SP. So regardless of whether you're looking for aggregate show or not, you really do need to perform that to ascertain whether or not the flow of the material is correct. At the end of the day, if you're putting in a large floor, you want consistency, and that's the only way to guarantee it. So after the first mix, what you'll do is perform a slump test, obviously starting at the lower end of the water parameter, and if you're happy with the slump, perfect, carry on. If you're not, increase the water by 100 millilitres per bag. So if you're doing a 3-bag mix, increase by 100 millilitres, stir it again for a minute and a half, and then re-slump test it. Obviously, to measure the slump, you've got the option of tape measure or calipers, and we'll go into detail of the slump in a later video when we actually perform the slump test. So make sure that you request a slump test on your first order and look after it. Okay, so the next item in your kit list is the sieve. So as you can see, it's just almost like a mining sieve, panning for gold. It is of a particular gauge, so if you want to buy your own, then feel free to do so, but just make sure it's the right gauge. It's only used for the self-leveler, obviously not for the material like PC or SP that has aggregate, otherwise it's going to catch it and you won't have any aggregate in your floor. In my opinion, not always necessary. If you're really on point with your mixing and you're keeping the edge of the Hippo mixer clean and not allowing any dry to build up and crust, then you shouldn't need this. Very few contractors in the UK use it, I must be honest. And it's a no-no if you're actually placing with the Hippo, because then obviously you're trying to run with the Hippo and sieve it through the sieve. It just doesn't work. So either at the top of your Pelican, from the Hippo, pouring in, and it will catch any dries, or if you're going into buckets, pop it in the bucket and sieve it through. But as I say, if you do keep on top of your mixer and keep that crust wet, just so you've got no crust, then you shouldn't need it. If in the event that you do have 1 or 2 little bits of dry come into your mix, it's not the end of the world, because you're going to grout the floor anyway. But it's here, it's available, but very rarely used, if I'm honest. So next in the process is actually gauging the material out at your required depth. So this, we use gauge rakes, pin rakes, skid rakes, whatever you want to call them really. This is a traditional pin rake, so obviously it has a series of pins that you set by way of undoing the wing nuts and moving the gauge up and down, and then simply measure with a tape measure the depth of each pin. Personally, I'm not a big fan of these because there are too many pins, so a lot of guys will actually grind off the central pins and just have the ones at the outer edge. The reason behind that is that if you're working in warm weather, or if something goes a little bit amiss during your placement and you're a bit slow, then these can actually create scars where the material doesn't heal up quickly, should it be hot or should you be a bit slow on it. So not a great big fan of those, however they are very common and used by many people. The unit that we actually sell is the 800 wide skid rake, so it has the skids on the edge there, and again they're simply loosened or tightened with these wing nuts here, and you'll set your depth from the bottom edge of the skid to the bottom edge of the guide. These basically are replaceable, so we stock the blades and we stock new runners as well, so you can pretty much recycle these and keep them going forever if you clean them off well. So once you've set these skids at the end to the required depth, when it's pulled through, as you can see, you've got that gap there, and I believe that these will run from 6 mil up to about 30 mil in depth. Okay, so that's the 800 wide. We do a 400 and a 600 quite crude, if I'm honest, by design, but they work really well. It's just a simple aluminium extrusion, and it's got 2 bolts there that you loosen off and set the depth off the bottom of the bolt. Just one thing I'll cut back to about the pin rake versus the skid rake or this bolt rake is that if you're doing a large floor on an epoxy scatter primer, these blades, because of the diameter, they're quite small, they'll actually wear down relatively quickly. So I've seen this wear down from 10mm to 8mm in as little as 130 square meters. So just be mindful of that if you're on the rake, you're the guy with quite a lot of time on his hands sometimes, that you could just keep measuring those and make sure that you're going to get that consistent depth. So that's the gauge rakes and pin rakes. So now we move on to spike rollers. It's a very important factor in the process of laying the rapidset true. You don't want just a generic plastic spiked roller. So we'll start off with the porcupine roller, which is for the self-leveler, the true natural or the true grey. And you can probably see a very, very thin diameter, 30mm in length. And basically, if you've got your water content right and you're getting your spike roller through it at the right time, then you're not going to get any witness. Unlike a lot of the polymer modified overlays, you can sometimes see the spike roller marks. Very unlikely, almost unheard of with rapidset true. So you must have one of these for the self-leveler, the natural or the grey with the porcupines. The longer needles will basically, I wouldn't say definitely eliminate, but certainly reduce the tendency for the self-leveler to grip the roller. Sometimes with the 15 or 20mm length pins, you might see it gripping the actual roller and almost sort of peeling up a little bit with the roller. So the 30mm length works really well. The second one that you see here is a plastic spiked roller, but it will be obviously apparent that they're very long pins, I think around about 70mm, and they're also offset. So looking at it, there's no sort of uniform pattern to it. They're slightly twisted and offset. This is used for the true PC or the true salt and pepper. So both products contain aggregate. If you were to use the porcupine roller for that, you'd actually push the aggregate down. So the idea is that this will straddle over the aggregate. Obviously it's going to catch some now and again, but that's going to ensure that you get a good spread of aggregate, providing your water content's right, of course. Not really too much more to say on spike rollers. It's really about aerating the product. So should you have trapped air, that's the idea behind it, is that they penetrate into the surface and pop these air bubbles, allowing the air to escape.